In a week of wrenching stories about families broken apart over hardline politics, where the images and sounds of crying children pushed the White House deep into a crisis and forced Donald Trump to bow to the uproar, we lead off today with more tears, but this of joy from a mother and her son who are back together now after more than a month apart. Mother overcome there. Te amo, you hear her say, I love you to her boy. That was the moment actually just hours ago in the airport in Baltimore. Beata Mariana is the mom, Darwin is the boy, and they are from Guatemala, seeing each other for the first time since they were separated at the U.S. border.
Say hi, Mommy.
Reporters surrounding them and asking Darwin how he's doing and about what he first said to his mother in that hug, seeing her after weeks in a detention facility. That 7-year-old so composed after such an ordeal and saying that he told his mom that he loves her. Megan Roberts is here. Of course, you can imagine she would have, those are words she would have been longing to hear over those weeks of separation. Tell us more about this story, Megan.
Not only weeks of separation, Heather, but weeks of searching, because that is how long it took for her to even find where her son was when the two were separated at the border. And now we have this really touching moment where the two are finally reunited that we just saw there and that we're seeing again. And I'll draw your attention to that blue blanket. That was his blanket that actually remained in her custody, and she had it when they were separated, and she said that she never took that blanket off so that she could finally give it back to him at this moment. And this moment of reunion happened after the mother sued the Trump administration. She was accusing officials of violating her rights. Now, that court case was supposed to be heard and supposed to start yesterday, but minutes before it was supposed to all start, there was an agreement reached, and then hours later, we get this moment where she finally got to see her son.
Me dio tristeza, me dio un gran llanto que me puse a llorar cuando lo vi, porque es el único hijo que tengo. Miren la carita que tiene, está triste, pero vamos a estar juntos, nadie nos va a separar.
Now, in the lawsuit, Beata Mejia-Mejia, the mother, says that officials simply came at the border and took her son. They didn't answer any questions. They didn't tell her why. She says that she took weeks to find him, that she got no clear answers from officials. And when she finally got a phone number to call, she says people didn't pick up for a long time. But she says that she has a message for parents going through the same thing, and that is to keep fighting to find their children, Heather.
And now that they're reunited, Megan, what's going to happen to them?
Well, now begins potentially a long wait. They're in Texas right now, and they're waiting for the mother's asylum case to be heard. So they're safe, and they're together, and they're waiting, and they will have some time to wait. Now, the reason that they left in the first place is because the mother, Beata, was fleeing death threats and violence from her husband in Guatemala. So they fled all the way up to the United States. They crossed the border, then they were separated. After all of that, she told reporters when they were reunited there that she does not regret crossing the border. She says, in fact, that she's quite proud to be in the United States, to be in that country, awaiting for her asylum claims to be heard. Heather.
Megan Roberts, thank you very much. Now, that is just one reunion. There are hundreds of children who remain in lockups across the United States, and there could be tens of thousands more. Let's bring in Stephen D'Souza, who's going to bring in more on the story from our bureau in Washington. Stephen, here we are on this second morning after Trump's about-face and ending the practice of separating and tearing families apart. And yet there's still a lot of confusion about the border crackdown, is there not?
That's right, and there's really only one sort of solid piece of information that we're getting from the administration, and that was from an official to the Associated Press saying that since May, 500 of the 2,300 children have been reunited with their families. But beyond that, we don't know much more. The official does say that there is a process being put in place for reunification, But you can hear just from that story of the Guatemalan woman just how complicated it is, because the children have been taken in some cases halfway across the country to places like Florida and Virginia. There are around 700 in New York, and officials there didn't even know those children were being sent there. And then, of course, you have the language barrier, you have bureaucracy across 3 different agencies, so it's really difficult. And the other question is, where are they all going to be housed if they're actually kept together, the families with their children? We know the Pentagon has been asked to house up to 20,000 migrants, but we're being told it's for unaccompanied minors. So what happens to the families? Just a lot of confusion, a lot of conflicting information as all of these agencies scramble to deal with the fallout from the executive order. And then, of course, there's the zero tolerance policy, which started all of this in the first place. It appears that at the border itself, it's effectively on hold. We're hearing stories about migrants being told to return to court, essentially catch and release. Others who are in court having their charges withdrawn because they arrived with children. And Heather, all this comes as the president continues his hardline stance, saying that zero tolerance is necessary.
Yes, and it's interesting today as, of course, you watch the presidential Twitter feed. Here is Donald Trump seeming to make another about-face this morning. But this one, Stephen, in the wider political fight over immigration. What is he saying now?
Well, it's interesting. He's, of course, sending conflicting information as well. And, you know, the whole zero tolerance policy was about putting pressure on the Democrats to come to the table to fight to get immigration reform. That didn't work. We saw, of course, the public pressure that forced the president to backtrack. So he started pressuring his own party. On Tuesday, he told House Republicans he was 1,000% behind their efforts to bring about immigration legislation. They've been spinning their wheels in Congress, haven't been able to agree amongst themselves. So now it appears the president's just thrown up his hands and is not going to do anything about it. Let's show you what he tweeted this morning. He says, Republicans should stop wasting their time on immigration until after we elect more senators and congressmen and women in November. Dems are just playing games, have no intention of doing anything to solve this decade-old problem. We can pass great legislation after the red wave. So it appears the president is going to make this an issue in the midterms, he knows, and we've heard that he thinks this is a winner amongst his base. And it's also interesting that he's going to try to reframe the conversation. You know, we see all these images of the children in cages. We see now these reunification images. But the president is going to be talking to angel families later today, and those are families of victims who were killed by illegal immigrants. And so the president is going to appear to frame this issue as one of personal safety for American families, and that seems to be the message he wants to come out of all of this today.